Changed my cover image because I found this one and I think it just really resonated with me. And I feel like this is how a lot of us feel right now, like this gentleman in this picture, just kind of looking out and confused about what to do and which way to go. And that really illustrates why we set these guidelines to begin with, because we knew that schools were feeling that way and really needing some guidance. And it's kind of a scary new technology. So a lot of people were a little bit unsure about what to do. But my name is Vera Cubero, and I'm the Western Region Digital Teaching and Learning Consultant, and always also was on the committee that developed the guidelines, and I'm kind of leading a lot of the work, and Stacy along with me is leading it now. So we're both kind of just doing everything we can to try to support schools all across the state, as well as the other DTL consultants and other innovative learning catalysts as well. And my contact information was there. I understand you already have this companion link, but I'll just share it again in case anybody joined late and didn't get it. That is a document that will be developed further later on, but this will be a good starting one for you, and it'll allow you to make your own copy, but you might want to revisit that link later because I plan on developing out further as we go through this series. And so that will give you your copy. We've already done the temperature check. I was going to display it, and so I don't have it open now. Let me just pull that open. I kind of like to know who's in the room. And so we'll look at the Mentimeter real quickly. You still seeing my screen, Stacy, the Mentimeter screen now?
Yes, that's definitely showing up.
Okay. Okay. All right. I want to make sure I didn't share just the slide deck. And I realize I haven't cleared this from this morning. So looks like we've got a couple more people I used it this morning as well, but like mostly teachers in this room as well. Most people don't really consider themselves to be AI literate, and mixed feelings about, looks like most people don't really think the schools have a plan for teaching students about AI or having AI used among students. And that's kind of what we're seeing everywhere. But this page is always pretty telling, and the thing that always rises up to the top is that critical thinking, which I'm not surprised it did again, along with adaptability, problem solving, creativity, collaboration, innovation. All of those are really, really important. And I say that everybody in the room recognizes that as well. And if you are familiar with our Portrait of the Graduate, you'll recognize also that a lot of those same things are featured in our Portrait of the Graduate. And that document is pretty in line with all of the research that has been done by companies such as Microsoft or McKinsey and Company, the World Economic Forum, all of them, when they've surveyed CEOs and leaders of companies around the globe, they're finding that those durable skills are the things that are mentioned. Most frequently, they rise to the top. Nobody says, I want a kid who has this score on a test anymore. And unfortunately, our education system, of course, is very test driven. And so it's difficult not to let that take center stage and focus, but it's important that we remember those durable skills as well. And so the session objectives today, we're going to talk about the problem that we were facing, kind of our why, the journey we went through to develop the guidelines, and then we're going to actually dig into the guidelines, do some hands-on activity with some of the guidelines. And as we go through this, if you're trying to follow along, my recommendation would be to have the document up in front of you and kind of follow through along with that. It has a link to this presentation, so you'll have reference to it as well going forward. But there's some places on the document for you to collect your thoughts and interact with it a little bit. And then also it's something you can take with you when you leave. But if you've seen my presentations before, this will not be a new quote to you, but I think it grounds our thoughts about AI very well. So I use it ad nauseum about every time. But this was John Dewey, of course, who said, if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. And I think that really helps people to think through this moment that we're in with AI being so prevalent in the world and in education and the future So I think that helps us kind of think through that. What we really need to do for our students is to make sure we're preparing them for where they're graduating into. And I'm actually going to skip these next few slides because I covered them last time. But there is definitely some evidence that this is already changing the job and the future job market. And that last slide showed that 66% of CEOs will not hire somebody without AI skills. This one reflects that 75% of knowledge workers today are using AI, which has nearly doubled in 6 months, so nearly 50% more. And this one, just overall, an overview of it is that everybody, teachers, students, and parents all think it's important, but everybody also says that they're not really getting the guidance they need. And so those statistics were from 2023. So those, along with our own observations and discussion with teachers across the state, we kind of led us on this journey. So, of course, in 2022, November, ChatGPT was released, and the immediate reaction was one of fear. People blocked it everywhere. And at that time, really, that was the only option in education, knowing that we're dealing with so many student users, and it was so unknown and kind of scary. But then, pretty soon thereafter, the ChatGPT wasn't the only tool out there. Very quickly, there were thousands of apps that came on the market that were AI apps, generative AI apps. And then additionally, all of the other tools that teachers had grown accustomed to using started incorporating AI as well. And so we started in our department building our own capacity, learning, developing best practices, developing some resources that we could use to help guide the work. And then in the summer, we had NC Bold last year, the 2023 version. Across the state, we had 4 days of training in the East and 4 in the West. And there were several sessions on AI there. I did sessions every day, all day. And those all, mine and other folks as well, were some of the most popular, most well-attended sessions. And a lot of the feedback we got from teachers was that they were the best training they had had, and to be able to present something to teachers that actually will give them some of their time back instead of something else to throw on their plates, which are already so full, was it was very enlightening to me, and it kind of reinvigorating as well, because teachers are a hard sell. Their time is so valuable that you really it's hard sometimes to give them something that they don't feel like is just one more thing. And AI is something that really can help them to be much more productive and creative, and help them to do their jobs better and faster and save some time for themselves. And so we went across the state building capacity with our teachers. And then in the fall, we started developing a steering committee. Dr. Vanessa Wren had requested a steering committee to be developed, and the computer science and technology department were working on one. And then our department started working on one with Dr. Ashley McBride. And then we just kind of combined forces and started collaborating, researching, and creating and revising our guidelines. And one of the main drivers of that was, as we were going across the state at NC Bold, we were talking to teachers, and we were just seeing how varied the guidance had been across the state. Even sometimes in the same district or even the same school, we had some folks who were using it, embracing it, using it well, teaching students to use it, teaching them about it. And then we had other places where it was still considered taboo and forbidden, even for teachers. And they weren't even allowed to admit they were using it. And then we had everything in between. So it became very clear that we needed a state guidelines. Of course, North Carolina is a local control state, so these are not mandates. They are guidelines or recommendations and considerations. But we were able to get those published in January of 2024, and we were the 4th state in the nation to publish guidelines. And our guidelines actually have been recognized nationally as some of the best out there and the most practical and hands-on. And these are the folks that were on the steering committee. Just like to recognize all of them. And And then this is a link to the guidelines. This is also on your document. So if you're not following along in the presentation, you can get this from the document as well up at the very top. But I do recommend that when you visit the guidelines, you'll always want to use that short link that you see there, because if you just open it and bookmark it, the PDF version, whenever we change it and update it, which will happen again very soon, because lots of updates have happened recently that need to be reflected in it, you won't have the most current version. So if you'll just make note of that short link, and every time we update it, the short link stays the same, so you can always have the most current version. And so our goal was just to provide a living current document with sound guidance, ready to use resources, to help students be sure that they're ready for the future. And then also to make sure that our students enter that future with the right training and mindset and ethical guidance to make it a better future than the opposite, because it has the potential of going both ways. And so it's for them and it's for us, it's for everybody. And this is just some of the um, feedback that we got. Stefan Bouchard gave us very high remarks, and I have something in there from code.org as well, who has given our guidelines very high remarks, and in several other people as well, but I didn't include all of them. And I do want to point out, as most of you are probably North Carolina teachers, you're probably aware of the North Carolina Digital Learning Plan, which Dr. Ashley McBride led the work around a year or so ago, 2 years now, I guess. But our guidelines and everything we do at Digital Teaching and Learning is arranged around the Digital Teaching and Learning Plan and those 5 focus areas. And so that's how we organize this document as well. And it actually worked very, very well, starting with the leadership and then moving around in a clockwise fashion. And so we'll look at those one at a time. But I also want to point out that these guidelines also align very well with the North Carolina Digital Learning Standards for students, teachers, and leaders, which of course we've adapted and adopted the ISTE standards with very minor changes. And so those durable skills in there and in the durable skills of the portrait of the graduate, both are very much in alignment with our guidelines. And so that was just a comment about our alignment. That's one thing that people really liked about it, is it's aligned with what we do already. And so another comment from Pat Young-Praddock of code.org. And so this is just kind of an overview of that first section. And if you're looking at your Google document, you'll see that the leadership section is near the top, and it shows you a picture of that North Carolina Digital Learning Plan. But basically, this section is all about like setting a foundation at the district level, making sure, first of all, that everybody understands AI. The people who are creating the guidelines, we definitely want them to understand it. I mean, in education, we wouldn't know what to think about people telling us what to do who had no idea about education, of course. But in this case, we want to make sure that those folks do understand it, because you shouldn't be creating guidance on it if you don't have a pretty thorough understanding. But then creating a committee, getting a committee together, and making sure that committee represents all the different voices in your school, in your district, especially teachers from various different disciplines, different age groups as well. Our exceptional children's division, we need to make sure those people are included in this discussion, because AI is one of the most powerful tools that has came along to help those students and to help them kind of level the playing field for them. So we want to make sure they're included in the discussion and in any kind of a rollout. We want to make sure all the tools are equally accessible to all of our students. We need to make sure our modern language teachers are involved, our counselors and social workers. A lot of times those folks are not really included in conversations, and they really should be, because of course we're having a mental health crisis in our youth. But these tools also have a lot of implications, and I feel like we did a kind of a poor job on social media in our schools, because it was always so taboo and not really addressed as it should be. And we can all, I'm sure that everybody in this group and anybody watching this afterwards can tell some horror story of something that's spilled over into school from social media, but we didn't really address it as we should have. So we want to make sure that all those people are included in the discussions, and as well as parents, people in the community, and then students. Students should always be included in the AI discussion because they are going to be the most impacted by it of anybody. The younger they are, the longer that they're going to live in a world that is increasingly more AI infused all the time. And so our main stance, Dr. Wren, very early on, when I think it was like January, when the guidelines, when the AI came out, and she was at a conference somewhere, Washington or somewhere, and people started texting her, asking her if we could block it. And she very early on said that no, we were not going to block it, that it was too powerful and had too many implications in education, and we needed to learn how to teach students about it. And so that is our stance. And it is also supported by the Teach AI Toolkit, which is, again, go.org. Pat Young-Pratt is the leader of that. But they pointed out wisely that blocking it will actually have the effect of widening the digital divide between students who have independent access at home with devices and internet, and people who can help guide them, and those students who are going to rely on the school to provide access to the internet, access to devices, and then access to adequate training. And this is a tool that really does have the potential to help level the playing field for all of those students as well. But if they're not being trained at school, it will have the opposite effect. It will actually put those students who are already facing the most disadvantages at further disadvantage. And so we took that stance in North Carolina as well. But we do want to make sure that we are always taking a balanced approach. The North Carolina guidelines reflects a really balanced approach, and that is what we think is appropriate in education. But it has tremendous benefits for our students and for our teachers as a whole, but there are also risks associated with it. And so your document, again, you'll see this graphic there in your document. And if we were in a face-to-face meeting, I would have you talk about it at your tables, kind of what are the main benefits that you see with AI in education and what are the main risks. But since we're in this webinar and we're not really that interactive at the moment, I would just ask you, if you have a really strong feeling about either a benefit or a risk, if you'd like to drop it in the chat, and then you're certainly welcome to also record it on your document. There's a place there for you to record your thoughts about it. Or if you want to come off mute, that would be fine too. We have a small group, so it wouldn't be a problem at all if somebody wants to come off mute and kind of talk about something you're really worried about or something you're really excited about. I'm going to try to practice wait time for a minute. I see Stacy is typing, but anybody else want to speak up?
One of the biggest benefits that I see, I'll just kind of break the silence here, is the potential for personalization. And I think that kind of leads right into differentiation too, is, putting these tools in the hands of teachers first. And then once we get our teachers on board, and the first thing they ask, and you've seen this in workshops too, is one of the first things they ask once they get comfortable with it is, how can we get this into the hands of students? And, so because there's such potential for personalizing, and, because, that's the thing that teachers want to do, is to be able to meet the needs of all of our students. And, there are some risks, and we have to get our guidelines and our policies in place and keep things safe, but personalizing is the name of the game.
And I agree, Stacy, and I think that covers a lot of those things as well, because personalizing is how you're going to differentiate. You're going to do personalized assistant, removing barriers, and increasing the creativity and collaboration as well. And so it covers a lot of those areas. A lot of teachers are also very excited about the fact that it really improves their efficiency, which is anytime you ask teachers, any survey you see of teachers, what's their biggest struggle, and it's always time. And I know I taught for 14 years in English and social studies, and anything that would give me time back is a win. And that this is one of those things that can. And I see Heather is typing something, so I'll keep an eye on that and see what it is when it comes through. There it is. She loves that the the risk of academic integrity is mentioned, but not something that keeps us from using it altogether. And I agree 100%. And we're going to talk more about academic integrity for sure later on. But all of these risks are real, though, and we have to acknowledge them. We have a lot of people who fall in the skeptic category, where it's the grim reaper. We have some who fall in the kind of the hype category, where it's all rainbows and unicorns. But the truth is, it's definitely somewhere in the middle. It is not going to be either one. It's not going to be the thing, the silver bullet that by itself fixes education, but it can be something that teachers and students can use to really modernize and customize and personalize education, and it can help in a lot of ways. But we can't let the scary things keep us from using it. Just the same as the internet. We could never make the internet 100% safe for all people all the time, but we had to realize that students were going to need that in order to be successful when they rolled out into the world. The difference is, and I was around when the internet was rolling out into the world and I was teaching, that took approximately 30 years from the time that it actually came out and was made public to the time that it was really heavily used in all classrooms and all schools. And with these generative AI tools, it is much faster. It's a much faster roll. We're only about 18 months in now, and it's everywhere. So that's a difference. There's a MIT paper that calls it an adoption versus arrival technology. So internet could be considered the adoption technology, where it was there, it existed. Some people had it, some people didn't. But schools that didn't adopt it weren't really at a huge disadvantage. It's until a couple decades after its inception. But with AI, Chat GPT, generative AI, it's considered an arrival technology because it just kind of arrived. It was everywhere, just in people's phones everywhere, and you really can't avoid it and you can't block it. And so, burying the head in the sand and hoping it will go away is also not a wise strategy, because it just gets more prominent every day. You hear the word ubiquitous thrown around a lot, but it really is. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's impossible to avoid. And so instead of blocking it, banning it, avoiding it, in North Carolina, we like to think about how can we use it appropriately? How can we use it to help our students? And how can we teach our students to learn how to use it appropriately? And so this little graphic is included in the guidelines as well. The impetus of this was really the U.S. Department of Education had a comparison between a RoboVac and an e-bike. And so I kind of took that and ran with it, but I decided to do 3 bikes instead. It seemed to work better for education. And so on the left here, you see this mountain bike example. Students and teachers who struggle sometimes that they don't have any assistance, and it can impede the learning. We've all had students I know who just kind of gave up because they struggled so much to master the content and get grasp the content. And so for those folks, it could potentially help them in a lot of ways. But the middle one is a motorcycle, and you can see the kid looks a little out of control there. We also can't just throw it out into the world and put everybody on it without proper training, because it actually is a kind of technology that can be dangerous. There are some concerns and considerations that were on the last screen, and we'll talk about them a little more. But so what we like to think of it instead is like an e-bike, where the human is always in control, but the bike can be used at the human's discretion to kind of reduce the struggle and result in more productive learning. And so I'm going to move on along. This is our roadmap, and we did borrow this from AI for Education, which is a fantastic organization. If you're not familiar with it, aiforeducation.io, and we adapted it a little bit, but it is a responsible adoption or responsible implementation roadmap. And as we've already said, it needs to always start with the leaders. They need to be knowledgeable, and then the teachers need to be trained. Teachers need AI literacy training, and they need not just a one and done training. It needs to be ongoing and job embedded, and they need to have time to kind of come back together in PLC groups or something and share their successes and their struggles, and share ideas with each other, what they've learned, concerns that they've come across, and all of that before they're expected to guide students. And so a lot of our districts in North Carolina are still within these 1 and 2, almost all of them, honestly, are between the 1 and 2. Some of them have started training teachers. Very few are actually working with students on these tools. And that's okay, because we would rather you proceed with caution and responsibly than to rush right ahead like that motorcycle. And then we have some unfortunate things that happen that can't be changed. But we are hoping that this school year we will kind of continue with 2 and get our staff developed, and particularly in our high schools, because I'm very concerned about our juniors and seniors going into the world with those statistics that we're seeing about how it's affecting the job market and not having any AI literacy. So we're hoping this year our staff, especially in high schools, will get well trained and well comfortable with it. And then hopefully by second semester, we'll start seeing that some of them are actually allowing students to have the opportunities to learn with it, as well as learning about it, as well as learning with it, especially our juniors and seniors who are graduating very quickly into that world. And then it'll be a process of constantly reviewing the guidelines and updating, which is something that we have to do fairly frequently. And so the districts need to set a process in place. So again, if your district is still here, you're not alone and you're not an oddball. It is only 18 months in, but it's moving very quickly. And so we've got people also developing staff. We hope that at least everybody is starting to do that. And then this year, we hope to see more people moving into that, educating students in the community level. Okay, so human capacity is our second focus area in our digital learning plan, and it is just all about building up your humans, teaching them what they need to know, building AI literacy in all the humans that work in your building and that learn in your building. And so there's a definition there about what it is and what's important, and I have that broken down more. But of course, it should always be aligned with your PSU guidelines, school guidelines, state guidelines. It should build basic understanding of how it works, how it transforms the job, learning, potential impact on the job market, concerns, limitations. It should always be very balanced. And then also eventually, as people get old enough to use the tools, they need to learn how to use them as a partner to support human learning, not to replace it. And so we're going to kind of move along. This is something that I say quite often using the word students, but I've replaced it here with everyone, teachers, district leaders, everybody should learn about AI before they're ready to learn with AI, but especially students. We need to make sure they're learning about it. And so even if you're not ready to put students on AI tools, or they're not old enough, or whatever the case may be, they can and should be learning about it, especially in our high schools again, because of the timing. They really need to be learning about it. And we have lots of resources in the document that you have as well. There's a list of resources for teaching middle school students about AI and with AI, and we'll look at that in a minute. The same with high school. And then there's also in the guidelines at the end of it, there's recommendations for district leaders to learn about it, and then for teachers. But again, this just kind of breaks down what AI literacy is, and there's several different definitions. This is kind of a compilation of several of them that I like. But it's basically having the skills and competencies required to use the tools safely, ethically, responsibly, and effectively. And so understanding what it is, what it's not, what it's good at, what it's not good at, the benefits as well as the limitations, how to use it safely, how to ensure data privacy, ethical concerns. That's a big piece of it, media literacy and ethical concerns, and then having skills to use it effectively. And so I just want to point out that there's several things that North Carolina has already implemented that will help support AI literacy. And one of them is the North Carolina K-12 computer skills. We have standards for all ages in computer science. They're not tested, so we have to be really careful that they are given the correct, appropriate time that they should be, not kind of kicked to the corner because they're not tested. But if students are really getting access to learn about computers and computer science at early ages, they're going to be building the computational thinking that's going to be necessary to help I see. Yeah, it would be, and you're welcome to do that. But those are the kind of skills that will help them understand AI and help to use it more effectively because it does require computational thinking. But it'll also help them understand the algorithms that run the software and how it operates, how it's used. Another thing is data literacy. I mean, we would have no AI if we didn't have data. It's all built on data, this huge database. And so the more you can incorporate data literacy, which is part of that computer science curriculum, into the standard, into your classroom and every subject matter, the better you're going to prepare students. And also the North Carolina Digital Learning Standards, again, those kind of rolled out during COVID, and you know how things were then. So they didn't really get the big hoopla that they should have, but those durable skills there. And then in the portrait of the graduate, we've already talked about. But we really need a huge increase and emphasis on media literacy as well, because our kids are going to live from now on forever in a world where you really cannot tell whether any piece of text, any sound clip you hear, any video, any image that they see is real or is human generated or AI generated. And there's a lot of ethical considerations around both the creation, the consumption, the sharing of these of this media. And so we really need to have kids critically thinking about that, talking about the ethics of it, and then again, learning about and with the tools is important as well. Okay, so this is an AI literacy timeline, and I've kind of added a little bit to it that's not on the document right now. Probably be updating that soon, but my personal recommendation is that in elementary school, students should not be learning with AI, and that is because I feel like they're not cognitively capable of completely understanding it to the level they need to before they're working with it. So I know that some students I've heard of elementary students, people are using like school AI bots with them. And while it doesn't require them to create an account, they're interacting with, for example, historical characters or book characters and things like that. And I'm not sure that our elementary students completely comprehend when you say, even if you tell them that you're not really interacting with this book character or this person, I'm not sure that they're really able to comprehend that completely. So I feel like in elementary, they just need to be the grade appropriate computer science, learning data literacy, digital citizenship, media literacy, and then learning about it. They can still learn about it even if they're not learning with it because they've elementary students have never lived in a world without AI. They've used things like Alexa and Siri and all of that their entire lives. And so those things can kind of be connected to help them make those connections. But in middle school, I do feel like it's appropriate to use teacher guided AI tools like Magic School Student, um, Phobias is another one, School AI, those tools that don't require students to create accounts because most middle schoolers are not going to be 13. And so you would not be able to put them on most of the mainstream tools. But those tools that don't require them to create accounts, as long as they are first getting basic AI literacy so they understand what's going on and they're always informed that they're interacting with AI and not real people, I feel like that is appropriate in middle school. But in high school, I feel like we really need to be moving toward independent access to these tools and students working with them independently, learning how to use them as learning partners and to enhance their own creativity and critical thinking. So the curriculum, that brings us to the curriculum and instruction section. And I see that somebody said they appreciate human capacity includes students, and that is super important. We shouldn't be doing anything in school that doesn't include students, but especially not this. And that one slide, you have access to this presentation, so you're welcome to download any one of those slides you want to and use it. That would be a great thing to send out. But we'll talk a little bit about the curriculum, instruction, and assessment. It's one of the longer parts of the document, but it talks a lot about, first of all, focusing on large language models, how to use them correctly and how to use them safely, how to use them effectively. But we talk a lot about rethinking plagiarism and cheating in the age of AI, because that continues to be what dominates our conversations whenever we talk to teachers in schools. And it is a very valid concern because we all know that students probably are and will continue to cheat using AI because they've been cheating before AI. They will continue to cheat after AI. But just like when the internet came out, I was a classroom teacher then, we had to train students that you can't just rip off passages from the internet and then put them into a document and claim them as your own. We will have to do that with AI as well. We're going to have to learn how to teach about it, to teach how to use it, to model it, to reinforce it, and then rinse and repeat forever, because these are tools that are not going to be going away. And so we're going to dig into that a little bit. I'm not going to go into these resources specifically today, but I do feel like it's really important when teachers or anybody's learning to use AI at this point. At some point in time, you probably won't need a prompting framework, but I do think a prompting framework is an important component right now, and for teachers in particular, because again, they're a hard audience because their time is so valuable, and something like this can really help them skip the learning curve, because people who don't know how to use the tools, first experiences sometimes are not great, and then they give up on it. And so if they know right off that it really helps to give tons of context, all kinds of specific details about your class, your assignment, what kind of format you want it to be, what kind of activities you like. Standards are great. If you know you're teaching a particular standard, I would just copy and paste it straight from the standard course of study and pop it in there, part of the context. But also the part of assigning a role is important. It really helps improve the output. And so teachers are not going to know that just natively. It's kind of not natural to say to a chatbot, you are an expert level science teacher who's skilled at breaking down difficult concepts for students. And that's something that really helps when you're working with large language models. And so there is, in the document that you have, there's also a little slide deck about the prompt framework, the craft prompting framework, that kind of gives lots of examples and things that you're welcome to dig into as well. And then there's some other tips here as well, about like providing reference materials like that standard I mentioned. But if you put a standard in there as opposed to saying North Carolina standard so-and-so, given that the actual standard, the text of the standard is going to really improve your output and reduce the chance that they're going to give you something that's not correct. And then this last one here, this is something that I developed and collaborated with AI for Education to put it on their website. And so it's there. You can go to it and download it from there. But it's also really important that we're constantly teaching, modeling, and reinforcing ethical use. And so this little acronym is just a quick and easy way for folks to remember what that looks like by evaluating the output, verifying all the facts and figures, editing the prompt if needed, or interacting with the model to revise and get more of what you want, revising the output so that it takes on your own voice and doesn't sound like a bot wrote it. And then always making sure the human is the responsible party for anything that's created. You can't blame it on the bot or the AI if it's false, if it's contains bias or anything like that. You can't blame the AI. The human has to have the final say and the final oversight of that. But this is something, because cheating always comes up, I do want to point this out. This is from a Stanford study. And fortunately, they have been studying cheating for a long time, long before ChatGPT came out. But whenever they did the same study again this year, 2023, last year, they found something. They expected to find a huge increase in cheating, but what they found was it stayed about the same. There's about the same level of cheating now as there was before ChatGPT. And so that is kind of a false assumption that a lot of people make, that cheating has just increased drastically since it came out. They're cheating differently now, but it's probably still the same kids cheating and probably for the same reasons. And then some kids who are very ethical are still not cheating, but they're also afraid to use the tools because they're afraid of being accused of cheating. And so that's an important consideration as well. And so I always, this is in our document as well, our guidelines, but I like to share this by Holly Clark because it just does a great job of kind of breaking down about AI detectors, because I hear people all the time talking about using Turnitin, using this one, using that one, and how they caught this many people cheating. And the truth is, you might have caught some people cheating. You probably missed a whole lot of people who were cheating that just know how to prompt. But eventually, if you haven't already, you're going to accuse somebody of cheating who didn't cheat. And because those things are not reliable, they claim to be, but they're not. And there's been lots of research done about that. And those studies there, or those articles, are linked in that Google document you have as well. But the truth is that they're not reliable. There's a lot of false negatives as well as false positives, because a student who knows how to prompt can fool them. I could fool these things in 5 minutes with anything that I put in it. And anybody who knows how to prompt can. And a kid can go on TikTok, and in 3 seconds, they can watch a TikTok video on how to beat an AI detector. And if you search that yourself, you'll see how many of them there are out there. And so the fact of the matter is, we can't take a chance when we're talking about kids that we might falsely accuse them, all of the damage that can do to their academic and careers in their future, but also their emotional well-being. And it also could do damage to the school, because a lot of those things are going to litigation now at the college level, and hopefully we won't see that at the high school level. But a lot of colleges are facing litigation over students being accused of cheating based on an AI detector. And so we have to be thinking about things differently. And that we also need to think about why students are cheating in the first place. And this is kind of a hard discussion to have, because I know as a teacher, I did the very best I can, but sometimes I just use things just because I didn't have time to do anything better, or that was the easiest thing at that moment. But a lot of times kids cheat because they're struggling and they don't have help. AI can help with that. Sometimes they have too much homework, not enough time to do it. I was a student who always worked from 14 up. I had a job, and all through college had a full-time job, worked my way through college. We have kids like that who have more responsibilities than the average kid, and they don't really have time for the workload that's given them. Sometimes, though, just because it feels like busy work, it feels pointless. They don't see how it's going to help them. They don't see the relationship to their world. And sometimes they're overwhelmed just by the pressure to perform, to do well. And so there are lots of other reasons as well. But how do we prevent it is what we need to be thinking about. This is also from that Stanford study, feeling a sense of belonging and connections at school, building those relationships that we always hear about, is a really important part, but also just strategies to make them feel like what they're doing is worth doing and it connects with them, and it's going to help them is important. And so we have created a couple of guidelines. This is the second iteration. Both iterations are available on your Google Doc. The first one, which is just a 4 scale, but that one's a student assessment scale. This one I call the 0 to infinity continuum for empowered learning. And so it just kind of breaks down that, yes, there are going to still be times when students need to do things without AI, but we need to, when our students get old enough at the high school level, there also needs to be time whenever they're able to use AI as an assistant, to learn how to use it as a brainstorming partner, to evaluate their own work, to get ideas, help them organize, things like that. But then they need to move on as they get more proficient and more AI literate. They need to have opportunities to use it in AI enhanced learning, to where they're actually working with it more like most of us do in our daily lives, where you're interacting with it, using it as a partner to help guide your work. And sometimes some of the AI created content might even end up in your final product. And then hopefully, eventually, all those students will have an opportunity to use it at the AI empowered level, which is when they're able to do things with it that wouldn't have been possible before AI, and tackling some of the problems in our society. And this is the level that really gives me hope that some of our students will be able to actually make the world a better place, not just prepare them for the world they're going into, but to prepare them to make the world a better place, because AI has shown huge potential already to solve a lot of really complex medical issues and climate issues, and it's being used for some real good purposes. And if our students are allowed those opportunities and building in a continuum where they're using it more and more interactively and deeply, then they will get to that point where they actually can potentially solve some of those problems. And so to allow folks to test this out, excuse me, I've created a GPT called the 0 to Infinity AI Integration Assistant. And since I don't know if you've been following it, but ChatGPT's came out with GPT several months ago, but you can only create them on the pro plan, which is still the thing, but you can now use them even on the free plan, but with limits. There's like message limits. And so I'd kind of stopped fooling with it until that came along. But since that came along, I made this GPT and you can use it on a free plan and it will help you to kind of think through that assessment continuum or the 0 to infinity continuum, and you can provide it some information and it will help you to develop a scale. And thank you, Stacy's dropped it in the chat. And we are going to take a few minutes. We only have about 10 minutes left, but I want to take at least 3 or 4 minutes to let you explore this a little bit. And I'm going to open it up as well and do one on the screen. I will say though that if maybe you've been using ChatGPT heavy all day and you're out of messages, it may not work for you until tomorrow. It may tell you because it has to be on the 4.0 Omni version. If it kicks you, it will kick you back to 3.5 after you've exceeded your messages for the day on the free plan. And so for some reason, if it will not work, I've also created one in School AI. And thank you, Stacy, for helping me test that out. But School AI is another format that lets you create bots. It's just not quite as detailed, but it will still kind of do the same thing. And so if you can't use the one on the left, then you may use the one on the right. Okay, I'm sorry. Some people will have it blocked, but I'm going to open it up, especially for those folks, and I'm just going to kind of show you what happens when I go to it. Okay, so first of all, it's going to come up and it's just going to explain what it is and has a button to get started. And so I'm going to click that to get started instead of going to the message line, and it will begin with giving you a description and an example of each one of those 4 levels on the AI continuum. And so it says AI, no AI, of course, AI free, no AI, AI assisted. They can use it for gathering information, performing tasks, and it'll show you an example here about pollution. It does a different topic every time. And then it explains each of the other levels as well. And then it asks you for some information. And so it wants the information, what kind of level you want. So I'm going to do a 2. So I'm going to say AI enhanced is my level. And then it wants a grade and a subject. So we'll just go with 7th grade. Those are interesting creatures. So we'll go to 7th grade and we will say science. Stacy's a science person, so she'll like that. And then we're going to have to come up with a learning objective, what we want it to learn. And so Stacy, I'm going to let you give me a learning objective. I'll put you on the spot. I didn't tell Stacy I was going to ask her for that. So
Okay, so I've been obsessed with forces in motion all day long, so let's do simple machines.
simple machines. Okay, what do I want to say about it?
Okay, so 7th
Understanding
grade,
simple machines
yeah, understand and give examples of simple machines in everyday life.
and give examples of simple machines. Okay, now just like a prompt though, you can also give extra context to it. If you had a standard, for example, you could paste it in, but you can also give context about your students or your class or anything. So I'm just going to add that it's a mixed ability group and we want to focus on collaboration and critical thinking. And you can add anything like that. If you're using a particular framework, if you want to, all DOK levels, I'll say that, all DOK levels. And so you can give it additional context and that will make it more targeted, just like if you were working in ChatGPT, straight in ChatGPT. So I'm going to put that in there. And then it says, okay, here we go. I'm going to give you an assignment. And it should give me 3 assignments. So the first one, and it's moving faster than I am. So exploring simple machines in everyday life. And it gives me these directions, introduction, research and note taking, AI tools for image recognition, using image recognition to identify simple machines. So it's breaking this down to those DOK levels. So it's including data analysis, presentation, collaborative, critical thinking, and then it's going to give me 3 other ideas. So I could do a school scavenger hunt, I could do a home inventory project, community exploration. And of course, if we had more time and if you were doing this as a teacher, you would really evaluate those responses very carefully, but we're running short on time. And so I'm going to zip through it a little bit, but I'm going to say at the end, it's going to say, which one do you want to explore further or would you like 3 more? And so I'm going to just say, I'm going to say, I like the first one. What do you think,
Excellent.
Stacy?
I was going to say, if we hit at 3 more ideas, then we could take it to the next level and we could say, how about if we compare, because I just looked up the standards and, we have new science standards. So we could say we would want to compare the efficiency of simple machines.
Okay, good. Okay, so
Yeah.
I've asked for 3 more, and as you can see, and this is like a brainstorming partner is the most powerful way to use these tools, in my opinion, because we're all limited to our little bit of experience and what we've seen in the world. And these tools have access to so much information that they're going to always expand your creativity and your ideas. And so we've got all these wonderful ideas, but the next thing I want to just point out is just like if you were in Chat GPT, don't ever stop with one prompt. And so we call it prompting, not prompt. And so you keep going until you get what you want. So I could say, okay, I like all 6 of them. I want to give kids a choice between them. And I'm going to say that. I'm going to say, I like all of them. Um, uh, want to give kids a choice, want to give a choice between them. Create a rubric to evaluate all of them. And I'm going to say include criteria for appropriate AI use and disclosure. And so I could ask for step-by-step directions for students. I could ask for a script, maybe for a substitute or for myself. I could ask for some practice problems. I could ask for anything, a door ringer, an exit ticket, a homework assignment. But notice that it's very quickly and it's creating a nice rubric for me. I didn't even say 4-point this time. I normally say 4-point. And this is not a 4-point, so I would probably simplify it by asking for a 4-point rubric. But in a minute, it's going to get to the point of the AI integration. Now, just like anything else, so if you don't like anything in the rubric, you ask it to change it. And so I'm going to say, make it a 4-point rubric, because I usually say that and I forgot to, and that's getting way too long. So it will redo it as a 4-point rubric if I do that. And somebody says you could start out with a pre and post assessment. Yeah, that's Stacy. Thank you, somebody. Okay. And it looks like it is kind of stalled out on me, and it may be that I've ran out of my oh, I forgot to hit continue, enter. So I'm going to ask it to make a 4-point rubric. Oh, it's going. Sometimes if it stalls out, I'll say continue and it will continue. But since I've done this presentation earlier, I'll probably run out of my messages before long. And so it adds that disclosure of AI, and then it will redo it as a 4-point rubric. Okay, so we only have about 4 minutes left. But I just wanted to share that with you, because as you're starting to think about re-envisioning what assessment looks like in your classes, that will help you. I will say that we're doing a full webinar on that. I forget when. One of our webinars in the future is all about adapting assessments, and we'll spend the entire webinar digging into that a little more and really exploring some assessments. But since we're almost out of time, I am going to go back to this and move forward. But that GPT is freely available. You can use it anytime you want. You can share it. Same thing with the School AI one. You can share those and use those. And I have some other GPTs as well, and we'll share those going forward in the next webinar. But I do want to talk real briefly about these last 2 components of data privacy and security. We all have to make sure, sometimes we all think about, well, that's those tech people's job. They're the ones who have to make sure things are private and secure. But the truth is, it's everybody's job. Every single person in the organization is responsible for the organization and the students' data privacy. And so we can't neglect this. And another unfortunate truth is that since 2020, when we had all the kids on computers, and we were just throwing apps at them, and everybody was just signing up for all kinds of stuff. Schools became a huge target, as we're as much a target as financial institutions for bad actors. And so and we have way less money than the financial institutions, way less security. And so we have to be really careful with our student data. And so we need to make sure everybody knows that. Everybody knows that you do not put any kind of private information in any of these tools, and that's whether whether you're typing it, speaking it, uploading it, copying and pasting it, no matter how it's getting in there, you have to be very careful with anything you're putting in there and make sure it's clear of any kind of personally identifiable information. And then also these tools, we are bound by FERPA, COPPA, SIPA, IDA, Section 504, just like everything else that applies to AI. And that brings us to the tech and infrastructure, which a lot of this is going to be on the tech side, but we also have to make sure that they're age appropriate. And as teachers, one of the best things that you can do is just make sure that you're following your district guidelines about adding accounts for students. I know once upon a time, might have been me. Teachers would go to a conference and see lots of shiny new apps and run back to their classroom and have all the kids sign up for them. And that is the number one way that bad actors get a hold of student data. And so in the last couple of years, we've really gotten much more strict on that in North Carolina. So we really have to be mindful of that. Always follow your district guidelines. Ask for permission, not forgiveness. This is one situation where permission is better. So we do have an appendix with lots of resources in there. We do have ongoing work. We'll have lots of great resources for you as school starts back from our AI collaborative. We're also going to have a North Carolina AI Train the Trainer collaborative next year. Details are still being finalized there, but be looking for that. We're going to look for a trainer in every PSU to take it back to their high school teachers, who then will take it and train students. And so be looking for information on that. Our AI resources webpage has all of the webinars. They're all posted there for viewing after the fact as well. But we do need your feedback. And I skipped that slide. Stacey, do you mind dropping the feedback in there? I took it out this morning for my other presentation, forgot to add it back. And this is how you get your certificate as well for attending today. You need to make sure you fill in the feedback form, and then it will email you your certificate after you fill in the feedback. But if anybody has any questions while she's finding that, I meant to unhide that slide. I forgot. But there's our feedback form. So please do give us feedback. That'll get you your certificate of attendance. And we hope to see you at all of our future webinars. Anybody has a question, let's come off mute or type it in the chat. We'll stick around for a few minutes and answer them if you have any. But this last slide here, while I'm waiting, it will give you opportunity to make a copy of this slide deck also, if you want a copy to kind of remix and use within your organization. That link right there will give you the opportunity to do that. And we appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming.